Castellanos has it, and the Phillies have the National League Championship. They have beaten the Padres 4-3, and they celebrate on their home turf as the Phillies are the 2022 NL champs.
From WHYY and Billy Penn, it is Hittin season. I'm your host, John Stolnis from The Good Phight and Billy Penn. You can follow me on Twitter at John Stolnis. I guess we're still calling it Twitter, right? We're not calling it X. Liz Roscher from Yahoo Sports. Follow her on Twitter at Liz Roscher or X. I don't know what we're doing anymore.
We're not doing that. No,
Okay.
we're not joining in that mass delusion. Elon Musk has wanted to turn everything into X since forever. Apparently, we're not joining in.
Yeah,
I won't be, at least.
No, call it Tesla. Maybe call it Tesla Y or something.
No, we
I don't know.
have to. No.
All right. Well, you can just ignore it totally. I think that's fine, too. We'll talk about this series against the Royals. The Phillies wrapped up here this weekend at Citizens Bank Park. I will admit I was selfishly looking for a sweep of this series, a 35-win Royals team, one of the worst teams in baseball coming in here. You think it's a great opportunity for the Phillies to really put some distance between them and the rest of the National League wildcard teams. But as it turns out, most of the rest of the National League wildcards had a horrible weekend, and so the Phillies have really kind of helped themselves even by just winning 2 out of 3. And I know, Liz, on Sunday when Taijuan Walker gave up 3 runs early, it sure did not look like things were going to end up on a high note. Our tones, I could already feel it welling inside me, was going to be very different from the tone that I'm presenting now. But thankfully, they did come back to win on Sunday, a huge comeback win for them that salvaged this series, which it could have gone in a whole other direction.
It really could have, especially after that first game. The Phillies love doing that. They love winning they love losing the first game of a series and then going on to win the other two just to screw with us, just to play with us. I'm actually going to bring it up and see if I could do a quick count.
Well, I remember I heard the stat the other day. They had done it's the 8th time this year they've lost the first game of a series and then gone on to win the series. That they whether it's a 3-game or a 4-game series, it didn't happen a single time last year. The Phillies did not win a single series in 2022 in which they lost the first game.
That's why we all
they've done it
feel
8 times
so
this year.
garbage every time they lose the first game of the series, which they've done, as we now know, a fair amount. 8 times, enough for us to, notice.
Well, that's just the 8 times they've won.
Oh, I guess
they've
you're
lost
right.
They have lost some series where they've lost the first game or split them, but they've won 8 of them, which is, way more than they did last year. They didn't do it at all last year. So it really is kind of an amazing thing.
Yeah, like I said, it's enough for us to notice that it does happen, and to continue, at least for me, to feel a lot of post-traumatic stress from last year when I was we were all curled up in a ball anytime they'd lose the opening game of a series because it was over.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we're gonna talk about this series and what happened on Friday, and as well as the games on Saturday, Sunday. We'll talk about all the Trea Turner and hullabaloo with the fans, and that really took on a life of its own this weekend. And Brandon Marsh hits the injured list. We'll talk about what the Phillies are going to do to cover for that. And Cole Hamels announced his retirement, Liz. So we'll talk a little Cole Hamels here at the end of the podcast as well. Real quick, the wild card standings as of Sunday night. As we're recording this, I believe the Dodgers who is there still playing? One of the wild card teams is still playing. But the Giants lost. They lost 2 out of 3 this weekend. The Chicago Cubs are really other than the Phillies, the only wild card team playing well at the moment. The Cubs have now moved in to a tie for that 3rd wild card spot with the Cincinnati Reds. The Reds got swept this weekend in Washington against the Nationals. The Marlins have now lost 4 in a row, so they're half a game out. They're holding the 5th spot. And the Arizona Diamondbacks have lost 6 in a row. They're a game and a half back of the 3rd wild card spot. The Padres all of a sudden are 2.5 back of the 3rd wild card spot. But the Phillies are tied with the Giants for the top wild card spot in the National League, and they are 3 games ahead of the 3rd wild card, the Chicago Cubs and Cincinnati Reds. So while they haven't separated themselves from the Giants, they have given themselves a little bit of breathing room away from that 3rd wild card. So at the moment, the Phillies in a stronger position than they have been all year and have gotten back to a season high 10 games over 500 at 61 and 51. So Liz, while this was kind of It's a little disappointing that they weren't able to take 2 out of 3 from the Pirates at the start of this 14-game swing against the Pirates, Marlins, Royals, and Nationals. They did make up for it by taking 3 out of 4 against the Marlins, and they won 2 out of 3 against the Royals, and the rest of the National League kind of helped the Phillies out a little bit here to give themselves a little bit more space. So all in all, I think, especially coming back to win on Sunday and saving us the heartburn of having to try and talk about this team losing a series at home to the Royals. The Phillies in these last 2 games, it really felt to me like some of the 2022 postseason vibes were back. The big 5 were hitting big home runs. They get down early, somebody hits a big home run to get them right back in it. You know, they kept battling back and forth, the crowd erupting in big moments. Like, it really felt, this was the first time this year for me, it felt like, oh my gosh, I see a little bit of the 2022 playoff Phillies for the first time here in 2023. Did you get a sense of that at all?
I did, and I'll admit, I think it's weirdly because the team is very close. They're all very close as far as teammates go.
Yeah.
And it's taken them a while this year to sort of let the fans in. Like, they've been saying a lot of the same things, but like the last couple of weeks, Nick Castellanos and Trea Turner have gotten really honest.
Yeah.
And that, the Alec Boehm thing did it last year. This year, it took a little longer for this, but I think the Trea Turner thing really allowed the team and the fans to connect in a way that they haven't yet this year. That moment, the moments with him, with Trea Turner, at home plate before he would bat, those were amazing. But him hitting that enormous home run, my God. I mean, what a moment that is. And I think that there really hasn't been another. I mean, I'm sure there maybe has been, and I just don't remember. But
no, but it's at least as big as any moment they've had this year.
Exactly. I think it's as big as any moment they've had this year. And that makes a difference to me. I think, now everyone's in it. It feels more like everyone's in it together instead of just the team fighting on its own.
Yeah. No, and that's the case for sure, because we've been hearing Bryce Harper talk about the fan. Bryce Harper had some comments after the game on Sunday, talking to on the postgame show. He basically said, given what the fans did with Trea Turner, it's incredible. I wouldn't want a fan base any other way. They want you to work hard, play hard, don't want you to perform. I wish I'd started my career here. Bryson Stott said after the game, outside of the playoffs, obviously, I think this is one of the coolest things I've seen, talking about the reaction to Trea Turner. In the media and all that, all you hear is how this place is terrible. You don't want to play here. They don't like their players, blah, 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 blah. It's these guys, there's a connection growing between this fan base and the team, and the crowds have been huge all season long. No team has seen as big a spike in attendance as the Phillies have had this year. The crowds were enormous this weekend, and during the course of the week when the people were talking about booing Trea Turner, cheering Trea Turner, I was definitely in favor of going out of your way to cheer Trea Turner, because it's certainly clear that he's been dealing with some mental stuff going on, preventing him from really accessing, I think, his full potential. Maybe pressing, because he doesn't want to hear the boos. He doesn't want to disappoint. Maybe it's not the fans, but his teammates or whatever it is. Maybe he does want to not disappoint the fans, and knowing that it's
at its most basic, he just wants to do his job well.
Yeah. And to know that you're coming to the plate now with the support of everybody, and really it's in reaction to his post-game comments after the game against the Marlins that he cost them. It's right. It's exactly like what happened with Alec Boehm last year, and I think it's a template for players, and we talked about this all the time last year when Alec Boehm was surging, that if you're honest and you're straightforward and you're upfront, the fans will come out and support you. And I wonder if this is the turning point, right? Is this finally a turning point in Trea Turner's season? And as a consequence, maybe a turning point in the Phillies season, where you've got all of these home games now the rest of the way. I think they play 30 of their last 50 games are home games. You're playing some weaker opponents here over the course of the next 2 months. And now it seems like maybe some of these star players are starting to come out of it. And Trea Turner may be one of those guys starting to come out of it. You mentioned the big home run. He had a big RBI double that provided insurance in that game on Saturday. He had a double in the bottom of the first inning that looked really good here on Sunday. and so there's something going on here. Maybe this is the start of something, and we've said it before. Is this the point where the Phillies springboard and turn it around and kick it into gear? But maybe this is what it is. We just kind of hope, but we kind of have to wait and see how Turner plays, from here on out. But he looked more comfortable, it seemed to me, just in these last 2 games.
He definitely did look more comfortable. And I'm glad you said that, maybe this is what they are, because I think we set ourselves up for failure when we look for a turning point, because stories are never that simple. We had the joy of last June of 2022 of that being like a storybook, but the end of that month came and things weren't that easy the rest of the way. We remember 2011, which was when things I think were as easy as anybody had ever remembered them in the history of the franchise.
Yeah.
That was a franchise high for wins. They barely lost a series all season.
Yeah.
And we all wrote, a lot of us remember how that felt. And that it's never going to feel that way again. We have to pretend that never happened. We're like, when are they going to turn it around? They are turned around. This is baseball.
Yeah.
This is the baseball season now.
Yeah. Well, they're not the
August,
Braves, right?
There. Exactly.
We see,
they're not the Braves.
And I think that's where some of it comes into play. You see this team in your division that's a machine that you beat in the playoffs last year, and you see this team that's just rolling. The Braves are clearly the best team in baseball right now, and they just pile up win after win. And you see your team. Why can't the Phillies do that? But then you look at the rest of the National League, and you see the Phillies are performing despite the fact that they can be so incredibly frustrating when they lose 2 out of 3 to the Pirates. But you just saw a Reds team go in there and get swept by the Nationals. We've seen other good teams get beat by bad teams, and I know I'll speak for myself. I need to take more of a longer view and just simply look back at last year and the course of this year and see where this team has been and what they've done and not get so hyperactive about it. Like if they lose 3 out of 4 to the Nationals, I'm going to be upset.
Then
I'm
you
gonna
should be. That's fine. There's no,
but it doesn't define things.
It doesn't define things. And I don't think you have to go back and take a look and be like keeping a graph of everything. I really don't think you have to do that. We're a weekly podcast. Sure. We broadcast we've got episodes coming out 3 times a week. Right. The fact that we don't constantly repeat ourselves and only repeat ourselves somewhat is a miracle. That's right. So let's talk about Aaron Nola. No, I'm just kidding. We are going to talk about Aaron Nola. God, must we?
We must. But I did just want to mention in these 2 wins on Saturday and Sunday, the Big 5 really did come through for them. And of course, they got big hits from Bryson Stott and Alec Boehm. Alec Boehm, love him in the 2-hole. He seems to really be a great fit for that spot.
You could not keep that man off base this weekend. He would not stop being on base. And Stott too.
Yeah.
The 2 of them are just...
Yeah.
They had that little dip after the beginning of the season, but they have just been powering everything.
Yeah, and Brandon Marsh, too, before he got hurt on Saturday. The 3 of them have been so steady, really, since June, since the start of June. They had that dip in May, and then in June, they've really, all 3 of them, come through. Stott, that first inning 3-run home run to answer back was shocking. That ball did not look like it was going to carry over the fence. I mean, that's a hot Philadelphia summer afternoon home run right there. That's a Citizens. We don't see many CBP specials anymore, but that was a CBP special that just cleared over the fence in left center field, but he obviously got a lot of it. He does not hit opposite field home runs, Liz. And so when that ball went up in the air like that, I thought maybe warning track, but it just kept going and going and going. And that was, I know the Schwarber home run was huge. The Castellanos home run was huge. The Stott homer in the first inning was the hit of the game because it just answered right away and let everybody know the Phillies are not going to roll over and die in this one. They do have a great shot to win this game and win this series.
Yeah, it's the not rolling over and dying that feels so good to watch.
Yeah.
Because there have been games where we felt like they would do that. We've seen them have lots of low scoring games when they did not win. And those are the worst. Like seeing them go down early and then just like immediately answer back, that's always what you want to see. Even if they don't catch all the way up, just knowing that there's life in the bats after seeing the other team do that. Like that's really comforting from a fan perspective.
Well, and especially after they got two men on, man in scoring position, and they hit into some bad luck. I think it was who hits right before Stott? Was it Castellanos who had a line drive right at the second baseman or something?
That was really bad luck. Oof.
Yeah, and so you're like, oh, they're going to miss this opportunity, or they could miss this opportunity, but then Stott answers. But I was going to say the Big Five, when they're hitting home runs, when they're doing what they did on Saturday and Sunday, I will say this about it. When the Phillies' five biggest stars, and of course everybody knows who we're talking about, Schwarber, Harper, Castellanos, Real Muto, and Turner, if they play well, the Phillies are borderline unbeatable. Because you have the rest of the guys around them who are already playing at a high level. You've got maybe a top five starting pitching staff with Lorenzen in the fold now already there. And you've got a bullpen which has its, hits and misses, but generally speaking has gotten the job done this year. If the Big Five are playing well, if they're hitting home runs, if they're scoring runs, this team is going to be almost impossible to beat because there's nowhere to go in the lineup. And you're not going to get much of a chance to breathe from the starting rotation most of the time. So that's why the wins on Saturday with Turner and Harper hitting home runs, and then on Sunday with Schwarber and Castellanos hitting home runs, this is how they did it in the playoffs in 2022. Harper's bat, his power seems to be coming around, Liz, hitting 379, 406 with a 621 slugging over his last 7 games. Castellanos figured something out.
No, thank God.
During the course of the Miami series.
Thank God.
In the last... Seriously, thank heavens. I mean, he does look like he's back. 567 slugging percentage, a 267 average with 3 home runs in his last 7 games. And then, of course, Trea Turner doing what he did. Kyle Schwarber had a 3-for-4 game on Sunday. He'd been walking a lot, but hadn't gotten many hits. But that ball he hit the dead center field off the batter's eye that is when Schwarber is really locked in, is when he's hitting balls out that way. And if the Big Five are hitting, this team can put a lot of wins together. They're going to be almost unbeatable.
This is what we've been waiting for.
Yes.
We've been waiting all season for this.
Yes.
And so it's so nice to see it actually happen. See wins that Turner is like actively participating in.
Yeah.
It is like that's like the final piece we've been waiting for. That's the one thing that has needed, the one player that needed to be started to get the Phillies over the hump where they've been stumbling lately, which is just scoring enough runs.
Right.
That's really it.
And that's the thing, is like there's no excuse for this team not to score runs, and that's what's been frustrating. Like I think we could understand, like if the team all season had been scoring runs, but the pitching had struggled, or the bullpen had been, having some issues, that would be a little bit more understandable, if not less infuriating. But it would still be, this team was designed to hit, and they're doing everything else right, but not hitting. And so at least in this series against some lackluster Royals pitching, the Phillies did find their bats. Even in the loss on Friday, they managed to score some runs. But let me ask you this, because before the Pirates series started, and we knew we were getting the Pirates, a struggling Marlins team, the Royals, and the Nationals. That's a 14-game stretch. I had said that I would have thought that with that level of competition, 10-4 was a reasonable hope for that, right? So I expected they would maybe win 2 out of 3 against the Pirates, that they would split the series against the Marlins, that they would sweep the Royals, and that they would win 3 out of 4 against the Nationals. So right now, what they've done is they lost 2 out of 3 against the Pirates. They did worse than I thought there, but they did better in Miami than I thought, winning 3 out of 4. They only won 2 out of 3 against the Royals. So as of right now, they're 6-4 in those 10 games. If, let's say they take 3 out of 4 from Washington, that would make them 9-5 in that 14-game stretch. Is that good for you? Would you be happy with that outcome, a 9-5 record in that 14-game stretch against those particular teams?
I think I would. Yeah, I would be happy with that. Like, there's nothing we can do about the games they've already lost.
Yeah.
I can't go back in time and fix that. So I think that's the best to expect from the Phillies here. Like we can all be greedy and be like, yes, let's have a sweep, but we know that's not going to happen. It's the Nationals, and something stupid will
at least in one of the games.
Something stupid.
Yeah.
It will happen. One of the teams will be dumb, and it will change things. So
yeah, and I'll say this as someone who lives in the DC area. I've seen some Nats games. They're spunky. They're not a pushover. They just swept the Reds in a 3-game series. They've got some players who are playing pretty well. CJ Abrams is really hot for them right now, but they should take 3 out of 4 from this team. It would be a disappointment if they didn't win this series, especially at home. 8-6 in that 14-game stretch, I would be unhappy with. 9-5, obviously at this point, I would take, especially since what we've already talked about, what the wild card standings look like and what some of the other teams have been doing. The Phillies have really helped themselves, but we need to stay there. What we can't have now is the Phillies lose 6 out of 8 and fall back to the pack. Build on where you are. Don't let anybody get any closer. Move further away from the Giants, especially with all of these home games, especially with games against subpar opponents, which you don't want to have. You got to 10 games over 500. The last time the Phillies did that, then they went into a losing funk and got back down to like 5 and 6 games over 500. And it has taken them like 3 weeks to get back to 10 games over 500. It seems like it's a lot easier to lose games than it is to gain games in the standings. And they've put themselves like they've got their foot on some of these other wild card teams, and if they could just step up, they could be standing on top of them. But too often we let teams kind of wriggle out, and the Phillies fall back to the pack, and that's what I am not wanting to see here over these next couple of weeks, especially in August. The whole August schedule is pretty favorable to them, Liz, and they really need to build on things. And I think winning 3 out of 4, I think, is the minimum that they should do against the Nationals at home.
Yeah, especially at home. I think 3 out of 4 is definitely right. Like, I am looking at the schedule. It is pretty easy. And I think I was worried, like, momentum for this team tends to shift if they're not just constantly playing. Like, everyone was worried, like, wow, they've got, with 17 games in 18 days or something like that. And I'm just like, good, go.
Yeah.
Just
play.
go, play.
Mm-hmm.
I know you need some rest, but, like, they go right. The Nationals come to town tomorrow. They go right into it. There's no break. That's perfect.
Yeah.
They're just going to keep going. They don't have to change anything about what happened today and on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key. This team thrives on routine.
Yeah, vibes and routine.
Oh yeah.
Keep the vibes rolling here. I will say one of the vibe killers is obviously Aaron Nola right now, and we got to talk about the game on Friday just a little bit. There's no need to dissect Aaron Nola at this point. We've talked about it a lot, but obviously a failure to hold a 2-0 and a 4-2 lead against the Royals offense. That came just 5 days after he couldn't hold a 4-1 lead against the Pirates. He's going to match up against Patrick Corbin in the series against the Nationals. Again, that should be a pitching matchup that favors Aaron Nola and the Phillies, but I just, with this guy, it's so frustrating. And I'll ask you, now that they've got Michael Lorenzen on this team, with Zach Wheeler, with Lorenzen, with Taijuan Walker, and Ranger Suarez, can you honestly make the case for Aaron Nola to start a playoff game over any of those other 4 guys right now?
Probably Lorenzen, because he's been here for 2 seconds. But
he was an all-star this year, and he just pitched. I mean, I'm not saying he's necessarily going to pitch 8 shutout innings every time he goes out there. We'll have to see how things go, but Lorenzen's pitched better than Nola all year.
That's true. That's entirely true. And it's like a knee-jerk reaction. Like, he's been here, it's fine.
Yeah.
But that's not true. If he can't be better. If he can't be better than Patrick Corbin, like, there's a problem. If he can't outlast Patrick Corbin and his 5.03 ERA, like, he has the most hits in all of baseball right now. Yeah.
I mean, the Phillies should destroy Patrick Corbin, but that does not mean the Nationals won't destroy Aaron Nola. And
that's true.
We've talked a lot about Trea Turner and offensive struggles, and we've talked about. I'm at the point now where with Aaron, I really wanted this team to go out and get another outfielder at the trade deadline, but I'm starting to see the genius in Michael Lorenzen right now, because if Aaron Nola can't go out there and keep you in games against bad teams. Yeah, he may every once in a while go out and twirl 7 3-hit 1-run innings, but if he's only doing that once every 4 starts and the other 3 starts, he's putting you behind the 8 ball. I mean, you're going to keep him in the rotation all year. I get that. You're not taking him out of the rotation, and it sounds like they're going with a 6-man rotation for the next little while, which I think is great. But I don't know what you do with him when it comes down to crunch time. Like if you've got a big game, for like suppose you got a series coming up against one of the wild card teams you're chasing, and or that you're leading, and Aaron Nola's getting matched up. Is it a point? Are you reaching a point? When do we reach a point if we're not there already? And I don't expect you to necessarily have the answer for this, but when do you reach a point where you say, I think we got to skip Aaron Nola here because he's not giving them a chance to win some winnable games. A 4-1 lead against the Pirates, you got to protect that. A 4-2 lead against the Royals in the 6th inning, you got to protect that. And he's just, this has been, it's not like this is a recent phenomenon. This has been all year. And I don't know what the Phillies do about it if it continues.
Oh, I'm with you completely. But I also don't know what they do about it.
Yeah.
Because he's been there for a really long time. He's got the respect of, the manager. He's got the respect of John Middleton, who was there when Nola was drafted. Like, he's been around for a long time, and there's the respect and the seniority makes it tough.
Yeah, it does.
Because it really does. Because my brain is going to what happens in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Because I'm thinking, all right, well, Zach Wheeler starts the first game.
Yeah.
Period. There's no question about that. I think anybody. But after that, instinct and history says it goes to Aaron Nola, but does it?
Yeah.
I think Rob Thompson probably would give it to him. Just
I think
out of
at
habit.
this point, you're right. Yeah, I mean,
but at this point in the season, I think he'd have to do a lot. We have to see the rest of what's going to happen.
Of course.
But if it was at this moment, he definitely would give him the chance. But he'd have to be really quick with the hook. That's something that I worry about with Rob Thompson, is that when it comes to a guy like Nola, I feel like he might have blinders a little bit.
Well, he's
it's
inconsistent with it
name,
because
and who he is to the team, then actually look a little further to the right and look at his stat line and actually see the numbers that he's produced.
Rob Thompson's funny because, of course, he took Zach Wheeler out of the game, out of Game 6 pretty quickly in the World Series, in favor of going to the bullpen. So it kind of is. It's not consistent. Obviously, he does it based on feel at that moment. And you're right. I think you're right. Aaron Nola probably does get the Game 2 start, but they got to almost be thinking about who do we warm up in the bullpen the second he gets into trouble. And it's been such a strange season for Nola that he just keeps giving up homers. He keeps getting hit around. Some of the other numbers are really good, but he just can't stay out of the middle of the plate. It's just, and in the game against the Royals on Friday, he started walking guys late in the game, and that got him into trouble too. So, it's an interesting decision, and Aaron Nola has some time to turn it around and have everybody gain some more trust in him, but there's no trust in him right now. I think every other starter in the rotation, including Christopher Sanchez, is more trustworthy than Aaron. Well, maybe not Chris Sanchez,
to me, not Sanchez, but everyone else for sure. I'd have Michael Lorenzen start before Aaron Nola right now.
Right now, I think so. Let's talk real quickly about Brandon Marsh hitting the injured list. He banged his knee against the center field wall, chasing down a fly ball in the game on, was that Saturday he did that? Yeah, I think that was,
yep.
Yeah, it was on Saturday. Bruised knee, he's going to be out 2 to 3 weeks. So Johan Rojas, who has been a lot of fun to watch, becomes the everyday center fielder. Rojas has not been a force at the plate, but because of his speed, he's played a lot of small ball and really done it quite well. Jake Cave, and they called up Weston Wilson to play left field. Weston Wilson has been tearing it up at Lehigh Valley, but that's a total.
Tearing it up at Lehigh Valley back in 1875 is what he's doing. Right. Weston Wilson.
It almost feels like Weston Wilson is like the name of an old school mail carrier.
Really?
Don't you think I use Weston Wilson to get rather than the auto gyro, we send all letters through Weston Wilson.
Oh, see, I'm imagining him in Deadwood.
That would work too.
I'm literally just imagining him in Deadwood.
That works too. Yeah. But it seems like whenever Kyle Schwarber is the DH, Jake Cave and Weston Wilson will play left field. Christian Pache will likely return before Brandon Marsh comes back. So you'll probably see Weston Wilson, unless he's tearing things up, get sent down, and Christian Pache return to play left field in a platoon with Jake Cave. Kind of interesting. The Phillies decided not to go with Simon Muzziosi, who has been tearing it up in AAA as well. And Scott Kingery, man, he's still just plugging away down in AAA. He's on a major league deal. I know he's not on the 40-man, but they don't want any part of bringing him to the big leagues.
Nope,
and
they do not.
They're done with Scott Kingery. They are playing out the string, and Scott's going to be somewhere else next year. Like he cannot crack the big league roster. It really is kind of interesting. But
it is. He's not Dombrowski's guy, and you could tell he wasn't Matt Klentak's guy by the end either. So it's too bad. But he's got some money. Hopefully he saved it.
Yeah. And and here's the thing: if the big five are performing, you don't need a ton out of Jake Cave, Weston Wilson, Johan Rojas. Like you need them to play good defense and come up with the occasional big hit and not screw anything up. I do kind of wish that Dombrowski had gotten another outfielder at this moment. No way you could know that somebody's going to get hurt, but
Weston Wilson's not doing it for you.
No, and he's had a tremendous season in AAA. Like the power numbers are there. And after he had a great spring training too. So I'm glad he's getting the opportunity, and maybe he'll make the most of it. Rojas has played pretty well. We've seen Christian Pache play pretty well when they got the opportunity. So the Phillies have had some level of success, at least with some of the right-handed hitting young outfielders that they've brought up. Still waiting for Jake Cave to replicate what he did down in AAA, which it's not going to happen. But hopefully the Phillies will be able to get something out of that combination of players until Brandon Marsh comes back. Brandon Marsh has been their best hitter all year. He's had the highest OPS on the team really since mid-April and has maintained it during the course of the season. I think Castellanos was ahead of him for a little bit, and then Castellanos slumped and Marsh retook it. He's been over 800 virtually the whole season, which is just tremendous. I don't know that we're talking enough about the season Brandon Marsh is having. We should spend an episode or part of an episode talking about what he's done this year. I mean, it really is remarkable, the season that he's had. All right, last thing before we wrap up here, Liz, Cole Hamels is hanging him up. He tried to make a number of comeback bids last with the Padres, but his body just won't let him get back on a big league mound. So Cole Hamels this weekend officially announced his retirement. I wanted to ask you, Liz, what your favorite Cole Hamels moment is of all time.
I mean, picking one is hard. I mean, in reality, like I have thousands of favorite Cole Hamels moments because I loved him.
Me too.
I loved him. Just watching him pitch was so fun. It was so easy. I always loved his motion was just it was beautiful. I remember everyone calling him Hollywood, and then everyone not calling him that because that was the dumbest nickname in the world.
Yeah. Because
he's just a normal guy who wore sunglasses.
Yeah, from California. He's, I think Ryan Howard came up with it. Then he said he came in wearing like the flip flops and the surfing shirt and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, there's Hollywood right there. Meanwhile, Chase Utley is like the epitome of Hollywood, but
but not even Hollywood. Just like that's not even a Hollywood look. That's Long Beach.
Yeah, that's Long Beach,
surf
exactly.
Country. Oh God, Ryan.
Yeah, it wasn't what.
He's
from
St. Louis,
so that's good.
You gotta cut him some slack.
Yeah, but I mean, the resume is amazing. A no-hitter in 2015 in his final game with the Phillies.
That's my favorite moment, really. I've got a lot of favorite moments, but that was my birthday. That was the first birthday I spent with my now husband. It was a wonderful, awesome day. We had a great dinner, and like Cole Hamels throwing a no-hitter was just like right in the middle of it. It was amazing.
Yeah. And he was part of another no-hitter against the Braves where he went 6 innings and then the bullpen finished up a no-hitter. I forget what year that was,
sure.
But they counted, but it didn't really count.
No.
Of course, the 2008 playoff run was amazing. He went 4-0 with a 1.80 ERA in 5 starts. He won Game 1 of every playoff series and also won the clinching Game 5s in the NLCS and the World Series. Was MVP of both the NLCS and the World Series.
King.
I don't know that I can... Yeah, King indeed. I don't know that I can pick any one game from that I think is my favorite. I mean, maybe the NLDS against the Brewers, because the year before against the Rockies in the NLDS, he started game 1 and got knocked around. And so then he got the ball again the following year against in the NLDS against the Brewers and shoved, just like dominated the Brewers for 8 innings. That might be my favorite, because that was kind of like the signal, like, oh, okay, yeah, he's different now. Yeah, he's serious now. And then just the way he went through the Dodgers and the Rays in those other 2 series, where they don't win the World Series without him. The most important part of that 2018 was Cole Hamels, in my opinion.
100%.
Also, his game 3 complete game shutout of the Cincinnati Reds to sweep the Reds in the NLDS in 2010.
Yeah. Yes, I was just going to look up some of his post 2008 seasons, and like his 2010 season was, and his 2011 season, God, excellent. And 2012, the 3 of those seasons together were so good. And he just sort of didn't get noticed because Roy Halladay and
Cliff Lee were
there. But he was just there plugging away, doing so well. An ERA under 2, barely above 3. Like those are numbers you just don't see. He was so good.
Yep. Yeah, and we don't know what happened in 2009. Weird season in 2009, kind of like what Aaron Nola is dealing with here in 2023. I think you could probably chalk it up to all those extra innings that he pitched in the postseason, and then all of the offseason obligations that come with winning a World Series and suddenly being a big star.
Or
certainly, I think
it could have just been what Nick Castellanos and Trea Turner are going through.
Yeah,
just kind of like a mental slump. And, all those years ago, there really wasn't the language to talk about that publicly in a way, especially for athletes.
Let me ask you a trivia question here, Liz. Can you name the 5 prospects the Phillies got in the Cole Hamels trade?
Oh, that's an important question that I hope. I know one of them was... No, I don't know what one of them was.
I'll start you off, and this might help jog your memory. Jorge Alfaro was one of them.
Oh, gosh. Was it Jared Eichhoff?
Jared Eichhoff is the second one. That's 2 of the 5.
Those are to the Rangers. Gosh, I don't remember now.
A young lefty hitting outfielder that we were all very excited about for a little while there. Played pretty well for them in 2017. Name rhymes with Sick Billiams.
What is his name?
Nick Williams,
Nick
of course.
Williams, thank you. Sorry, he had just completely left my head.
Yes, I know. He's left a lot of our heads. Just never really materialized. And then you had Jake Thompson and Alec Asher were the other 2 prospects to come along in that deal. So the Phillies really didn't get much. I think Jared Eichhoff was probably your best get out of that entire group. The Phillies also got a major league pitcher in the deal with Cole Hamels. In addition to the prospects, I imagine you don't remember he barely ever pitched for the Phillies. Matter of fact, I'm not sure he ever actually pitched in a game for the Phillies because he was injured. You remember Matt Harrison, Liz?
My first thought was Matt Harrison, and I'm like, that can't be right. And yet I was right. It was Matt Harrison.
You were. And can you remember the Philly who went to Texas along with Hamels? The Phillies actually traded 2 players to Texas in this deal, 2 major leaguers. This is a reliever who has had a very long and very good career in the majors.
I don't know.
Jake Diekman.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been around. He's still around.
He's still in there. He's still pitching and pitching really well. Yeah, he's had a remarkably long career. Jake Diekman has. So good for him. Last thing on Hamels. Well, actually 2 things. Should his number be retired by the Phillies? I think so.
Yeah, I'm going to say by the Phillies, yes. I know they only do that for Hall of Fame players. I personally think that Cole Hamels has like an edge case for the Hall of Fame, depending on how some of the chips fall in the next, 5 years or whatever. Like I feel like there is a chance for him down the road. But
well, that's what I was going to ask. My next question was, is he a Hall of Famer? So yeah, good. I'm glad you answered that. Yeah.
But I think that regardless of that, the Phillies should retire his number. He is the most important player on one of the most important teams in Phillies history. If not the most important team in Phillies history. So,
yeah, I think outside of 1980, I think that will always be the most important team, the one that broke the curse, broke the 96 years or whatever. But that 2008 team, that was they rode Cole Hamels in that season, and then he went on to have a very long career for the Phillies, and some very good seasons after he left Philadelphia as well. So I'm also a large Hall guy. I'm much more lenient in who I think should be in the Hall of Fame. I think Cole Hamels was one of the 2 or 3 best left-handed pitchers of his generation, of his era. Obviously, Clayton Kershaw, Chris Sale probably get a lot more of the attention as far as left-handed starters go. And Cole Hamels didn't blow you away with stuff, so it never looked like you were like, whoa, Cole Hamels, wow, crazy. But the dude just struck a ton of guys out with that fastball changeup, and then kept developing pitches as his career went along. He develops a cutter to get right-handers out, and then he develops a curveball to get guys out. I mean, he just kept reinventing himself year after year. I think he's a Hall of Famer, and I think all the historic benchmark numbers that we think pitchers need to have, that they've had to have over the course of baseball history, they just don't apply anymore. Like 300 wins is never going to be approached again by any pitcher. 200 wins is probably going to be that mark, and it may not even need to be 200 wins at this point, because pitcher wins don't really matter. You're going to look at stuff like WAR and JAWS and, fielding and pitching, how he did compared to his peers during that time. I think Cole Hamels is worthy of being in the Hall of Fame, and I do think his number should be retired as well. So just a very cool thing, and I hope the Phillies get his name on the wall as soon as next year for the Wall of Fame. That's a no-brainer, to get him up there as quickly as possible. And it wouldn't be nice to see him maybe throw a first pitch out this year at some point before the season's over, maybe before a playoff game. Did he throw one out last year? I think maybe he did throw one out last year before a playoff game with some of the other 08 guys.
Yeah, maybe he did. Yeah,
I want to say that he did before games 3, 4, or 5 of the World Series. I don't remember, but anyway, Cole Hamels, one of our favorites, says goodbye to his baseball career, but a great career for Cole, and I'm sure we'll be seeing him back in Philadelphia at some point in the near future.
If they don't retire, I mean, it's got to be next year on the Wall of Fame for him.
I hope
so.
Like
it needs to be an instant. Like, there must be recognition of this. This is, I mean, he outlasted every other member of the 2008 World Series team.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and I think they will do that, and just a matter of whether or not they can work out the schedules to get it all done as quickly as possible.
I mean, what else is he doing?
Right.
He's not playing baseball or preparing to play baseball.
He's a charity man. He's got that Cole Hamels Foundation thing going on. I'm sure there's more than just that too.
Oh, of course, yes.
And so, yeah, he's a busy dude, I'm sure. But all right, let's wrap up this edition of the podcast, number 702. We're at 702 podcasts already. Wow, I can't believe it.
Wow.
Liz, final thoughts from you.
Just a tiny bit more Cole Hamels talk. Friend of the podcast, Matt Winkleman, tweeted a little blurb from an old Fangraphs article. Talking about some of the players who could just not possibly be traded for Cole Hamels because they are just too good and too important. Some of the names are accurate. Some will make you laugh. We've got Xander Bogaerts. This is, by the way, for the Red Sox. You remember the period where it was just Cole Hamels to the Red Sox, and that's the only
Mookie
thing?
Betts.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It was Xander Bogaerts is off limits. Mookie Betts too, and Christian Vasquez, since he's already broken in. Blake Swihart isn't moving. He's worth somewhere between $35 and $50 million. Henry Owens seems like he's worth right around $20 million to $30 million. That's close, but a little steep. Already I'm trying to be generous. I believe that's current MLB team staff member Dave Cameron's work.
Oh, boy.
As Matt Winkleman pointed out, Henry Owens and Blake Swihart do not look to have been on teams this year, including independent ball, so Cole Hamels outlasted both of them.
Yes, he did. That's funny, those names. Some of those names are ring true. No doubt about it. But that would have been great if to get Xander or Mookie, wouldn't it? If they could have just figured out a way to make that happen.
Yeah,
but
that was never going to happen.
Nope.
But to pretend to have said it like that was just sort of like Cole Hamels is trash garbage, and anyone thinking that he's worth any type of player is a moron.
Yeah, right. It's like he's not worth any of our top 8 picks at prospects. But we'll take him if you'll take our AAA trash. Can you handle that? No. As it turns out, the Phillies didn't really get anything of value from the Rangers either. Although they did use Alfaro in the Sixto Sanchez JT Realmuto trade, and but those other guys all flamed out pretty bad. Before we wrap up, I don't know if you caught this, Liz. Trea Turner paid for a billboard, is thanking Phillies fans for the standing ovations this weekend on billboards around Philadelphia. They're already up, and you can see them as you're driving around. Like this. There's one on I-95 as you're approaching the stadium, and in other places. So, I mean, these are the spring training vibes. We're starting to feel some of the spring training vibes right now, and the Phillies players love playing here, which I just think is really cool, and it makes this team winning really fun. So,
I just love them. They're ridiculous. You know, when Brandon Marsh got hurt in the outfield, Kyle Schwarber came over and like sort of stood in front of him, helped him get up, and Schwarber, who's a little bit taller than Marsh, just kind of put his hands on Schwarber's shoulders and just sort of was like, ah.
Yeah.
And then pretty much the entire team came back to check on him. Like some people came in from the bullpen, and then as Marsh was limping away, they were sort of following behind him, like just a blob, like a lost tour. It was heartwarming and funny.
Yeah, they love each other, man.
It is really so cute.
And as a fan, it makes you like the team. It's so much easier to root for a team you really like the people on it, you know?
And it's easy to like them when you see them liking each other and enjoying what they're doing. Did you see Rhys Hoskins, by the way?
Yes, I did.
Standing on the
huge
top
biceps.
step.
Yeah, flexing during the course of the game. That was. Did you see Nick Castellanos when Turner hit the home run? His reaction in the dugout. You know, it's all great. It's all great right now, and thankfully they won on Sunday to keep the vibes pristine right now. And we'll see how they do when the Nationals come into town. I think it's a bad time for the Nationals to come into town for Washington. I think the Phillies are gonna. I think the Phillies are gonna have a good week against the Nationals. Well, folks, that's going to do it for this edition of Hittin' Season. And don't forget, folks, to check out the Hittin' Season Patreon. We got lots of good stuff going on over there. Check us out at patreon.com/Hittin' Season. And, of course, you can find all of our work at billypenn.com. Check out our landing page. It's billypenn.com/Hittin' Season. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time right here on Hittin' Season.